Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are live for the Rep. Chapman debate. We will be debating on the topics of Ron DeSantis and his electability in terms of the 2024 election, economic populism, as well as what the future and what the vision of Donald Trump's movement really is. So thank you, David, for being here in this debate. So, as people are piling in for the debate, I guess, do you want to go first and we'll do opening statements, or do you want me to go first? Okay.
I'll go first. I guess I've always been, as everyone knows, I'm a little abrasive towards DeSantis. My biggest objective, a proponent against DeSantis, is that he talks a big game on immigration. And then as governor, he's kind of been a little wishy-washy, because on E-Verify in 2019, when they were trying to pass the bill, he made some statements saying that the problem with E-Verify is that a lot of powerful people are against it, and he was worried about the party unity. I have this article posted to my profile. Anybody can go read it on Twitter. In that article, Florida politician is also quoted saying that they're just going to pass a symbolic bill that placates the base, which is what they ended up doing because it exempts all private employers. Now, it is true that he did get more done than anybody else, so that, I guess, that is a plus for him. But on the downside, it is concerning that he concerned himself too much with donors and the GOP establishment, and he probably shouldn't have not so much done that. And then on the sanctuary cities, Florida was in compliance. They didn't need a sanctuary city ban. And in the sanctuary city bill that they banned, they added an exemption to children's services, created a sanctuary department, which that bill should have been vetoed by DeSantis, and it wasn't. So you could find all kinds of ways to dismiss it. I think those are relevant in terms of how he governs versus how he campaigns and talks. And those are the things that I look at. So take that how you will. But I think those are relevant contentions towards whether he would actually be a change agent in Washington versus just a good conservative.
Okay, so my take on Ron DeSantis is that I think that he's probably, I would say, one of the best governors in the country, if not the best governor, because I disagree. I think he's been fairly effective when it comes to most of the issues. Donald Trump handpicked him and endorsed him back in 2010 or 2012, I believe, when he was first running for Congress. And that was when Trump was even, more of an anti-establishment figure than he is now, mainly because he saw potential. And I believe that DeSantis largely has lived up to his potential when it comes to the issue of immigration. You mentioned how E-Verify, he, didn't mandate it for the private employers, which I believe he probably should have. But the bill that was largely given to him on his desk was definitely a bill that he should have signed. And by and large, I believe it was a big step in the right direction. And I don't think the bill was perfect, but I'm not necessarily going to criticize him for that. I don't believe that Donald Trump federally mandated E-Verify during his presidency for all private employers, because there is E-Verify that does exist at the federal level as well. In terms of the sanctuary cities ban, I don't know what child services you're exactly talking about exempting, but if it's things like young children and exempting that, I guess you could say that probably was a fairly popular position in the state of Florida. Should he maybe have signed that? I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to look into that even further. But ultimately speaking, banning sanctuary cities in the state of Florida, I don't see how that isn't necessarily a good step in the right direction, because he effectively got rid of most of the sanctuary cities when he was governor by ultimately just banning them completely. So I personally don't think that that's that much of a valid criticism of why he's not the best choice if Donald Trump does not run for president again. Like I said, I think that I would prefer Donald Trump to run in 2024, but I just feel like a lot of the criticisms that you've thrown at DeSantis haven't exactly held the most water, I guess I would say.
So it doesn't bother you that he kind of placated the donors with exempting the private employers. I mean, it's not the fact that he signed it. It's not the fact that he did more than most. Yes, it is in the right direction. It's not so much that Donald Trump didn't do it either. It's his attitude towards not wanting to fight the establishment in Florida and ignore the donors. It's the fact that he signed on to that bill and endorsed it while it was being passed and was okay with exempting them because he didn't want to stand up to those things. It's more about character and whether he's willing to stand up to them or not. It's not about what he got done and how much. It tells us about who he is and what he'll fight for and how far he'll go. He's more like a Ronald Reagan, not a Donald Trump. Ronald Reagan's 11th Amendment was thou shalt not attack a Republican. Okay. And I don't agree with that. You can't make change if you're not willing to shake the boat. And that's why Ronald Reagan was more of an establishmentarian guy who went along to get along, even though he was great. He was great. He had a lot of achievements. But in the end, a lot of the problems that we deal with today were created under Ronald Reagan. Do you really honestly believe that what Ron DeSantis would ever stand up to the party? The evidence that we have with DeSantis is that he wouldn't. Trump has.
Well, okay. I think that DeSantis would stand up to people that have, fundamentally disagreed with him. I don't necessarily know of any examples off of the top of my head where he has, but he is, from what I can tell, he does work. Like I've said, he is not an establishment guy, but he does know how to work with the establishment. In terms of the E-Verify thing, like I said, I haven't looked into it. I guess you could say maybe he could have sent the bill back and instead asked and mandated that it was put in. And that I could understand with. I could understand that. But in terms of him being an effective leader, nobody exactly I can tell is really perfect when it comes to this issue. As I've mentioned, what did Donald Trump do to pass through any legislation for E-Verify? I can't really, I don't really know of any specific legislation that he passed, even though that fact that he had a Republican House and a Republican Senate for 2 years. There's been plenty of issues that Donald Trump has caved in. Donald Trump signed some bills that he's signed, including his tax bill. That wasn't exactly, the same exact thing that was in his platform, but he signed it anyways because he believed that it was a step in the right direction. So I'm not exactly going to sit here and criticize Ron DeSantis for every little bill that he signed that wasn't entirely perfect and say that he's, somebody who is a member of the establishment specifically because of it.
Well, I would say this, simply because Trump didn't mandate E-Verify doesn't explain the way the argument that I make, that it speaks to the DeSantis's character, that he's more concerned about what the donors say and what the party says in Florida, as opposed to what his promise was in 2018 to do a full E-Verify. Remember, he embraced the exemption before he even signed it. And that's the point I'm making. He was okay with giving the giveaway to the donors. That's the point I'm making. It's not about him doing more than most. It's about him caving before he even signed it. And it tells us who he is as it. And simply equating what Trump didn't do or simply did to DeSantis, that's not a logical argument. That's a fallacy called appeal to hypocrisy. You don't actually get anywhere debunking my argument, okay? Maybe take on my argument a little better.
Well, like I said, I don't exactly know. I'm sure you could find a lot of examples of, minimal caving from any potential presidential candidate in 2024. Like I said, I haven't looked fully into the situation regarding E-Verify. But what I do know is that looking at the fact that he did sign it and he did something, I would say that means that he is fairly effective on that front. He could do more. He very well still could do more. His governorship is he's only halfway through his first term. Who knows if he potentially will do something more between now and then. He's only been there for a couple of years, and half of that he's spent dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So in terms of a fully verify, could have he sent it back? Yeah, possibly, potentially he could have. But just the fact that he didn't do it, I'm not necessarily going to sit here and say he was caving to the donor interests. I don't know exactly what his donors are. I don't know exactly what his donors specifically support. He's definitely somebody who didn't get the most outside money in his 2018 campaign. That's why the election was so close to begin with, is because you had all the outside money heavily backing his opponent. So like I said, I agree he could have gone further, but I'm not going to sit here and say that he's some, full-on establishment guy because he didn't, send the bill back to Congress.
I'm not arguing that he should have sent the bill back to Congress. I'm arguing that he shouldn't have supported the carve-out before it even got to his desk. I'm arguing that he shouldn't have been worried about powerful forces against it, as it says in the article that's pinned to my profile on Twitter. If you don't believe what I'm saying, please go to my account, my profile. It's pinned to my profile. You can read it for yourself. I am quoting verbatim from the article. He was worried about party unity and powerful forces against the bill, and he backed the carve-out to the bill because he was worried about those two factors. He caved. Okay, that is who he is.
I mean, if you want to look into the bill, it still is a basic form of E-Verify. Like I said, it could have gone even further, but a lot of the public and private employees, especially the ones that are contracted with the government, they do mandate some form of E-Verify, whether it's making sure that the individuals that are being hired are citizens or not. I don't think that it's, like I said, you said certain private employees may
all
be able to
employees.
Get some. Well, I'd have to look and fact check that, because the articles that I've seen have said that it will require certain changes to hiring for certain private employees. I don't know if it went fully in depth, but it seems like it did affect some private employees in some capacity.
If they were working on public money, then they have to use it. But, your hotels, your agricultural workers, who are the biggest offenders of illegal labor, they don't have to do E-Verify, which basically makes the bill pointless because you're not stopping any illegal labor. And it's not about
some illegal labor.
Where?
Well, the other industries that are not hotels and agriculture. If you look,
so maybe like 10%.
Well, I don't know an exact breakdown, but there's certain things like construction contracting that deals with certain government projects. That's definitely a very big, portion of where illegal aliens work in is construction. So it does prevent, construction work from not being done illegally. That would probably be a good thing that is getting, their DeSantis E-Verify was stopping that. So they do verify for that. In terms of certain, big industries, like you said, hotels and agriculture, are those exactly the biggest donors to Ron DeSantis? I feel like a lot of the big, mega donors would have some form of, industry that would be contracting.
Not necessarily have to be his donors. It could be donors to the Republican Party, because remember, he was also worried about party unity. Again, go to my profile and read the article. He was worried about party unity too, which means he is a little shaky on standing up to the Republican Party.
Yes, but I'm just not going to sit here and say that reason alone was, warranting attacking him nonstop. Like I said, it could be a valid point of criticism, but when it comes to DeSantis versus a lot of these other people that you see the establishment trotting out there for 2024. Besides Donald Trump, I think DeSantis would still be in a close second, regardless if he did, do a minimal cave to a certain portion of the workforce on E-Verify, which, again, if the bill on his desk had that in it, he probably would have signed it. And as you said earlier, you said DeSantis still should have signed that bill.
Well, you don't want to send it back, because if you send that back, you're not going to get another bill. But the problem was that he supported it before it even made the desk. So,
but you said that if he was to send it back, he wouldn't have gotten another bill. And either way, he would have had to support it if it was on his desk. So I don't understand where the criticism is really coming from.
The criticism is how he was more worried about the donors and as it said, the powerful forces outside, and worried about the party unity. He was more worried about pleasing the wrong people than the right people. And that's why he backed an exemption before the bill was even passed. That's why the legislator passed the bill the way he wanted it. Again, go to my profile and read the article.
Again, I just don't know what you mean he's trying to please the donors. Either way, he signed what was there. And you said that if he sent it back, that he wouldn't have gotten another bill. So I don't understand why signing the bill necessarily pleases the donors, even if it's not a perfect bill.
If he sent it back, the legislator didn't support anything that didn't have the carve out. So they weren't going to pass it unless he supported it. But if he vetoed it, they weren't going to give him something stricter because they were also bought by the donors, or maybe he wasn't. But again, he supported it before it came to his desk, and that's why they eventually
But after
were okay.
It was written, though. But you said he wouldn't have gotten another bill. So I never
said after it was written. I said he wouldn't have gotten another bill because the legislator didn't support anything stricter. So it's kind of like with the Kristi Noem thing. She vetoed something because it was too strict. They didn't send her something different. They gave her what they wanted to give her.
Yeah, but DeSantis, the opposite thing with Ron DeSantis. He's working with Congress. He got exactly what he possibly could have. It is very possible that Ron DeSantis, he wouldn't have exactly signed something. If you look, like I said, using the Trump comparison with Congress, they didn't exactly give him a full wall, but he still signed the first spending bill he got because it paid for a decent amount of border security. It's kind of the similar thing here. I think it's just kind of confusing how you would sit here and say that.
But
Ron
that's not
DeSantis
the argument.
Was caving.
That's not the argument, though. The argument is that he was more worried about the outside forces and the party unity. Okay, you keep sidestepping it and making it like, oh, well, he got what he needed to get. He got enough. He got it in the right direction. It's about the behavior prior to signing it that tells us the character of Ron DeSantis.
Well, like I said, but what if he didn't sign it? What if he didn't sign it exactly? Would you just want him to be a little bit tougher on rhetoric when it comes down to the whole immigration thing? I haven't heard anything that he's said, criticizing it.
I don't listen to any politicians' rhetoric because a lot of times politicians say things and then they don't do it. So,
well, why exactly does it really matter then when it comes down to DeSantis and not criticizing it?
Because he said one thing in the 2018 campaign, and then in 2019 he's talking about how he's worried about donors when he said he wasn't, or powerful forces.
Did he say he was worried about donors?
He said he was worried about powerful forces. So I assume that probably means lobbyists. Those are kind of like donors too. Okay. Again, go read the article. It's pinned to my profile. Okay.
So you're saying that in this article, you have a quote from Ron DeSantis specifically saying that he was worried about, you said, putting that aspect in the bill because of these so-called special forces?
Powerful forces.
Okay.
Powerful.
So the article, I'll pull this up on another tab here if you're okay with that, because it says DeSantis vowed, I will sign E-Verify into law in the state of Florida. I'm supportive of E-Verify, but he said, but we need to figure out a way to get it across the finish line, specifically saying that he had to find a way to get E-Verify signed. So it says,
what article are you reading?
The Ledger article that was pinned to your profile, as you had previously mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay, so he said that he says he's ran on it, he's in favor of it, and he said we want to deliver on the things we can, and he said that he's not going to quit on E-Verify, but acknowledge that there's powerful opposition. So he is, in this article that you actually mentioned, he does seem to target the Republican Party. He does say that he doesn't have unanimity with the Republican Party on this specific topic of E-Verify. So already what he's saying is that he's, not in lockstep with the Republican Party on this, and he has to work with them in order to get some form of bill passed. Just because the bill's not 100% perfect doesn't mean that I don't think doesn't mean that I think it's a fair criticism to sit here and say that Ron DeSantis is caving into the establishment of the Florida GOP specifically here. I don't know if that's really the best line of arguing, but that's just my personal take on it.
I think that's your personal take because you just don't want to attack him.
Well, no, I'm like I said, I think that he probably should have been, as I originally said, I think that he probably should have been tougher in rhetoric. But reading the article, it seems like he was fairly tough on rhetoric, and he says that he wants to deliver on things we can, but he said that he's not going to quit when it comes down to E-Verify. So it seems like in the future, if, let's say, Republicans expand their majority in 2022 in the state of Florida, which they probably will, then maybe he could sign an additional, piece of E-Verify legislation that would be sufficient enough for you, because it seems like that is something that he still wants to get done in the state of Florida. But in terms of E-Verify, I think we're getting a little bit off track. There's other, criticism that you have levied at DeSantis that I have felt were just not that fair in terms of criticism. You said that I believe you've stated several times that you said DeSantis is pro, free trade, or doesn't exactly have a trade record, which very well may be the case when it comes down to Ron DeSantis. He has been a fairly local guy, and in Congress, he has somewhat of a mixed record when it comes to trade. But I still have yet to find any evidence that he supported the Trans-Pacific Partnership. You've shown me the piece of legislation that he signed that allowed TPP to be signed, but it was just a bill that was something to do with service members and healthcare. I don't understand how that was really relevant to the TPP.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go there. I will go here. With DeSantis, the only thing I'm worried about on trade is that in 2018, he says about the trade war that he supports Trump's trade war, but he doesn't support tariffs. No, we could read that any way we want. But he's probably not like Trump on trade. Maybe he morphs into Trump on trade. Maybe. It's hard to say that he will. It's hard to say that he won't. But from his congressional record, and his comments during the trade war, I would say right now he's not like Trump on trade, but it's an open question. That's really all.
There are different forms of protectionism besides tariffs. Import taxes are another form of protectionism. There's several other forms. Just saying that he may not exactly support all forms of tariffs doesn't necessarily mean that he's weak on trade necessarily. Also, when it comes down to trade, I think that as you've seen, Trump has evolved on some issues as well. He evolved on guns. He evolved on abortion. You could say he wasn't really pro-life until the 2010s, from what I understand. So DeSantis, very well, as we've seen other politicians evolve on certain issues. DeSantis has said in 2018 that he can't think of an issue where he really disagrees with Trump when it comes down to things like trade or foreign policy. So even if he might not, use tariffs as a form of protectionism, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not fully open to it. So I guess it's something that we are going to go and, eventually have to see what he does. If he runs for president, we'll have to look at his platform. And if I feel like his platform is weak, then I'll say that his platform is weak. But if Donald Trump runs for re-election, I don't think that it's very likely that Ron DeSantis even tries to run. That's really beside the point. I think the last criticism that I think you've levied at him that I thought was a little unfair was the fact that you said that he is a fake conservative, or I don't know. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you said that he was weak because he supported anti-BDS legislation.
I never said he was a fake conservative.
Well, yeah. Like I didn't want to, as I said, I didn't want to put words in your mouth, but you said that it was weak that he didn't support, or he did support anti-BDS legislation, but didn't Donald Trump also support anti-BDS legislation? I think pretty much a lot of Republicans have supported anti-BDS legislation. So I don't exactly know if that's a, fair criticism. It might be a fair criticism, but, to say that he would not be a good president because it seems like Donald Trump, who you support vehemently. And, he has been very, very pro anti-BDS legislation throughout his entire presidency.
Yeah. Half the time I don't even know what BDS means. To be honest with you, I have no criticism of it. I was just looking at the regulation of speech, but I'm not interested in going there. I'm more interested in going to the fact that he's not a populist. He's more of a conservative. And you could tell that by his book that he wrote in 2011. When you write a book, you are passionate about an idea. I know that. I'm writing a book. Okay. In his heart of hearts, he is a staunch conservative. He is not a populist. In his book, it's a full-throated embrace of federalism, which most people don't realize this, but federalism, the Federalists were not the populists. It was the anti-Federalists who are the populists. Okay. The Republicans, eventually, the Federalists became the Whigs, who became the Republicans. Okay. Most Republicans love federalism. It's actually one of their faults. But listen, he's not a populist. If he was a populist, he'd be more into Jeffersonianism, Jacksonianism. He wouldn't fancy himself as a Teddy Roosevelt conservationist. Okay.
Is that you're saying DeSantis said that?
Yeah, I have no problem with him thinking that he's a Teddy Roosevelt conservationist. I mean, he said that all the time. I have no problem with it. That's just what he thinks. I mean, he's open to it. A lot of people like that about him. But based on his personal admirations and his ideology from the past, he's not a populist. He's just a staunch conservative, which isn't bad. It's just, last I checked, this is a populist movement. Okay. And so if you're looking for a conservative, he's probably the best guy to put on the ticket. But if you're looking for a populist, he's probably not your guy.
Okay, so I think that this probably is going to be a transition into the next topic of the debate, as populism would be the second part. Personally, I feel like if you look up the definition of populism, there's several meanings to what it could be. The main meaning that people really ascribe to it today is just policies that specifically are more anti-establishment, more helping the people, whether it's on social policy, whether it's on economic policy, immigration, things like that. I don't necessarily believe that conservatism and populism are antithetical to each other. Obviously, conservatism could, as reference conserving the establishment, but also it could refer to, traditional social conservatism. In terms of Teddy Roosevelt and populism, I feel like populism could really be anywhere on the political spectrum. A lot of people say, I disagree with, somebody like Bernie Sanders, but a lot of people have said Bernie Sanders is, populist, and people like AOC are populist, but also people like Trump and Buchanan and historically have been populist as well. I just feel like the term populist is something that is fairly arbitrary. It could be applied anywhere on the political spectrum. Even people like Ron Paul could be considered libertarian populist. People like, Rand Paul as well, to a lesser extent, could fit that bill. So I don't necessarily believe that DeSantis is, a full-on populist, but I don't necessarily believe that he's some, fully establishment guy. And I don't believe that conservatism and populism are really antithetical to each other, depending on the definition of conservatism.
Well, first of all, your definition of populism is different. Most of what we understand of his populism is been a way that over the last 50 years, most people just apply populism to almost anything that's anti-government, pro-people. But that's not populism. Populism can be found basically through the Occula demands of 1890. They were not trust busters. Okay, they weren't trust busters. When they were angry about the railroads monopoly, they were more worried about the lands that were being swallowed up by the railroads. They didn't care about the monopolistic practices. The trust busters were the Teddy Roosevelt progressives. Okay, all this trust busting that everyone's talking about, it's not that I'm against it, but it's traditionally hasn't been on the populist side. It has been on the classical progressive side. Classical progressive as in Teddy Roosevelt type stuff, not and populism is not traditionally is not as flexible as it has been made today. So that is incorrect, at least from history. populism descends from Jeffersonianism into Jacksonianism, all the way into the 1890s with the Ocular Demands and the populist candidate of James B. Weaver. Most people confuse populism with the progressives. They are not the populists are not yesterday's progressives. Populism is not easily applied to anti-government, pro-people stuff. That is just something that has happened over the last 50 years. So,
well, we're mainly talking about populism in a modern context. Obviously, populism has meant a lot of things over the years. I believe William Jennings Bryan, who was not a Republican at the time, he was more of a, an economic, on the left economically. People like him and Huey Long historically have also been called populist, as well as, many people have called Roosevelt a populist. So
Huey Long was more of a socialist than a populist.
Well, the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive from the, modern context of it. A lot of people back then, William Jennings Bryan also has, been referred to back then as a populist, talking about, all the policies that specifically, benefit, or at least appear to benefit the people, because they don't always do. But when you talk about, populism in general, it's mainly utilized as a term to refer to policies and politicians that specifically claim to represent the will of the people. And the definition has been used by people like, referring to Jackson, but also people referring to like William Jennings Bryan and, FDR to a lesser extent, but Huey Long as well, who I don't believe was a socialist, by the way. He was more of a distributist when it came to economics, but altogether, he could easily be labeled as somebody who was a populist.
Well, if we're talking about populist in a modern sense, then it's not populism. It's more like a neo-populism, a new populist, because most of the populism that we talk about today has more in common with the classical progressivism of Teddy Roosevelt than it does about the old populism of the movement of 1890. So it's not traditional populism in terms of modern. It's a neo-populism, if anything else. This is why I always call you a progressive.
Well, because terms change, though. That's what I'm saying. If you're going to call me a progressive, it's going to be confusing to a lot of people, because
terms may change, but ideology doesn't necessarily change.
Ideology may not necessarily change, but the terms to describe the ideologies definitely change. So if you're going to be talking about, 1890s level terms in the modern context, it's going to be confusing to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Maybe you should pick up a history book and read it.
I do read books, but that's beside the point.
Goals of movements change, but ideology doesn't, not so much. Over time, terms change just because we just call things different. But that doesn't excuse or ignore the fact that what populism today has in common with progressivism, just because they're two different names, doesn't mean that they're the same thing.
Well, exactly, but the names change. So if you're going to be calling, me a progressive, it doesn't exactly make sense, because terms change.
I call you a classical progressive.
Well, still, it's not exactly true, because even people like, when you talk about progressive, a lot of people reference social policy, and even the radical progressives of the 1940s and 50s would still be considered far right or radical conservative today by many standards. So I'm not exactly sure that I agree with that assessment of it 100%, but that's just really the take on it. In terms of trust busting, as you mentioned before, you say that that's not a part of Trump's movement. I believe that you say it's not anything that Trump is.
No, I said that it was never a part of the populist movement. It was always part of the progressive movement.
Okay, well, would you say that Trump trust busted AT&T and Time Warner from merging? Yeah. Does that exactly make him a progressive, or no?
it's hard to say because he's more of a populist. Just because you're a populist doesn't mean that you don't diverge into other ideologies. Trump diverged into traditional conservatism. He diverged into progressivism. I mean, he was, in my opinion, he was more of a realist and a pragmatist than anything else. Because
so what would you say that Trump has in common with the original populist movement? What would you say that Trump has in common with somebody like Andrew Jackson, for example? Because I feel like somebody who would have a lot in common with somebody like Andrew Jackson would be the type to, heavily advocate for things like ending the Fed and things like that. I think that is more in common with people like Ron Paul than does with somebody like Trump.
Well, see, that's where you make the mistake. See, that was an issue of the day. Ending the national bank would be more of a that was just, everyone believed that the national bank was unconstitutional back then. Okay, so that's why even John Tyler fought against the national bank, vetoed the legislation twice, got himself expelled from the party. It's not really equatable to auditing the Fed today simply because the times have changed. However, probably an Andrew Jackson would probably be equatable to Trump in the sense that, I guess I really haven't thought about it, but Jackson.
They talk about it quite a bit. I mean, you seemingly,
listen,
you would expect you to think about it.
On the bank, I haven't, but it's not really a monopolistic sense. It's more of a disruption of institution sense.
Okay.
It's more of a stance of principles, because you can't equate the auditing of the Fed to the National Bank of 1832, because the times are different. They thought infrastructure spending was unconstitutional back then. So it's not equatable. That's all I'm saying. So it's very hard to make those comparisons. My big comparison to Trump and Jackson is on the 3 a.m. elections that they had, and the cult of personality that they had.
Okay. But that's not like the widespread ideology of Trump. I feel like the widespread ideology of Trump has more in common with things like the neo-populism or new populism and new nationalism that you've decried as progressivism.
Possibly, but not so much. Also, the Jackson's results prior to Trump, the working class never had it better under anyone than they had it under Jackson. Economy, opportunities, everything. The greatest time they ever had it was under Jackson. And now it was Trump. The economy prior to COVID was probably the best that the working class had ever seen it for them and their opportunities. And Trump surpassed Jackson for the working class. And so that's probably where they equate the most, is just results and access to capital for populism.
Okay, but that you're so that's kind of what I would probably agree with to a certain extent, in the fact that populism, really what it means, especially in a modern sense, is the policies that specifically help the people. Going back to, I don't want to go back too much, but
it's not how they help it's not help the people. It's also how you help the people. If you're going to use the government to help the people, like the progressives did in the early 1900s, then you end up having directly elected senators that still haunt us today. It matters how you do it. You can't use the government to help the people.
Well, I feel like a lot of people would disagree with that. I feel like a lot of people,
well, then
most people that would call themselves populist.
That makes you a classical progressive, then, that you're willing to use your enemy's power to solve your problems.
Well, I mean, Donald Trump used the government a lot. You look at the stimulus checks. Would you say that those are anti-populist because that's using the government?
That's actually not the point. The point is, in a populist movement, you have certain goals to fix corruption, wage growth, whatever it may be. And you can't just use the government, like with trust busting. You can't just use the government to regulate and tax and levy or whatever, because you're just asking your enemy to fix your problems. And
I feel like if you have control of the government and some government policies you believe can provide the results, I don't really see exactly what the problem is. I feel like what you're describing is more of, libertarianism than exact populism when it comes down to the government.
You think that the progressive movement of the early 1900s was a success?
Well, I think that by and large, if you look at the breakup of things like Standard Oil, I would probably agree with that. I don't necessarily think trust busting is always going to be a solution. I just think that it's something that we probably should be open towards when it comes to these big tech companies. And it is important that we have policies that do target a lot of the negative things that the big corporations do. Obviously, not all corporations are bad. I agree with you on that point. But I think, like, going back, I don't want to go back too far, but going back to like Ron DeSantis, he was actually effective when it comes to big tech and proposing decent legislation that would, at least to the extent that he possibly could do, because a lot, at a state level, you can't really regulate big corporations that much. But I felt like it was a fairly decent, piece of legislation against big tech that was populist. And that's an example that I'd like to use. I'm saying that a lot of the times the mega corporations are not going to be our friends, and they are used as tools by the establishment. They essentially bragged about, I guess you would say, making Biden have a much, much better chance than he did. You look at the changes of the laws in the election process that specifically were done without the consent of the state legislatures that changed essentially the electorate significantly, and at the end of the day benefited Joe Biden. That's the corporations. They shouldn't have the power to do that. They shouldn't have the power to act as political entities, at least in the sense that they do now. So believing that we're just going to deregulate our way out of this when the corporations are in the way, even if government regulation has allowed them to become as big and powerful as they are, I just feel like it's not the best strategy, and we should at least be open to some form of, government intervention when it comes down to this.
Well, first of all, that big tech legislation that you said was great for DeSantis actually took some criticism from the right, meaning Michelle Malkin and Laura Loomer was actually critical of it. So it wasn't all that great. Second of all, in terms of you thinking the progressive movement was a success, seriously, dude, you have no idea. The government grew like 3 times. I mean, almost all of the federal agencies were created during that time. Third,
well, it was the 30s though, not the early progressive movement. Like are you talking about under Roosevelt, or are you talking about under FDR or Teddy Roosevelt or FDR? Because there's a massive difference.
I'm talking about under Teddy Roosevelt. That was the progressive movement. And then on to corporations. You can't just, you're going to really, you want to raise taxes on corporations. Listen, there are 30 million corporations in America. Okay. Most of them are not Amazon and Google. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
So raising corporate taxes are going to hurt a lot of innocent people just because you don't like what MLB says. It's not fair to them. Okay. I would suggest this. Tariffs. You can tariff these people. Okay. That's a direct tax on a corporation that as a penalty. It's kind of like a sanction. That way you avoid the punishing the innocent, and then you can use it as leverage like Trump did on all these other things, as leverage to make, whatever, maybe do a deal, a compromise, or simply just punish them.
Well, I don't disagree. I don't support Biden's increase on the corporate taxes either. I think that when you're raising the corporate tax rate by 7%, the marginal rate, a lot of the mega corporations, as you mentioned, they already do their banking overseas. I would agree with you on that. They find their ways out of paying taxes. I don't believe that the effective rate is necessarily going to move much at all for them. And it will hurt the small businesses that you mentioned, the millions of small businesses that do have to pay higher corporate taxes. When it comes down to the loophole issue, that is something that I do believe we should look into for the mega corporations. They shouldn't be able to get out of paying certain taxes. I don't think Amazon should be able to get out of paying taxes because a lot of the small businesses don't really have access to a lot of these loopholes. The MLB has access most likely to a lot of these loopholes. A lot of these corporations do, but the smaller corporations don't. So I do believe that corporations should be paying their fair share, if not more than their fair share. I really would just have to say that I would agree on that point, but something does have to be done. And I'm not going to sit here and claim that I'm the number one economics expert when it comes down to taxation, but loopholes are something that we need to look into, especially closing them, because like I said, I would agree raising taxes won't do much, but we do need to do something because these corporations are not exactly our friends.
I 100% agree with cleaning out all the loopholes and exemptions. If you're going to make certain people pay taxes, everyone should have to pay taxes. I'm not for raising taxes, but I think that if a corporate tax is 21%, then everyone that files under a corporate status should have to pay 21%. I just think that's 100% fair. Amazon should not be paying zero taxes because the guy next to them is paying taxes. I think that's fair. I would advocate for individual punitive taxes like tariffs or anything else that they have in their tool. It'd probably be more effective because you don't have to pay the taxes once a year and they can plan for it. Tariffs are like collect now at the ports or however they do it. But they don't, trust me, corporations hate tariffs with their import-export. It's the reason why they couldn't stand Trump's trade policies. They can't stand tariffs. And I think it would be a great way to punish these corporations. Just put tariffs on them. They'd freak out and maybe they'd bend to your will. But you're not going to see it under Joe Biden.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As I've said, I've criticized several times Joe Biden's tax plan because I just disagree with it. I don't think that it's really going to solve any problems whatsoever. And in fact, it probably won't do anything other than raise taxes on, mid-size corporations or small businesses that actually benefit the greater good most of the time. So I guess on terms of the economic populism, I don't know if you wanted to move into the, vision for Trump's movement, but
yeah,
you've been fairly critical of not just me, but several others. You've been critical even lately of, I believe, Barnes and Barris and Ryan James Gerdusky, and I believe Pedro Gonzalez and a few other individuals. I guess I'll just give you a chance to say what your arguments are when it comes down to that, because a lot of people seem to be confused with your assessments of them. And in terms of the vision of the Trump movement, and why do you believe your vision is exactly better?
Well, I don't think my vision is better. That would be pretty narcissistic. In terms of all the names that you mentioned, people like Barnes and Barris kind of did a 180 on Trump right after he left office, and that kind of just moved me the wrong way. It was almost like they never even supported him to begin with, because especially Barnes, he just does maniac rants about Trump now, and it's just annoying. I would advise stop watching him. However, let's actually talk real stuff. In terms of the movement, I'm not a big fan of criticizing endorsements simply because I think Trump's long game is the open Senate seats and Georgia and Arizona. You can get 9 MAGA senators elected to the Senate if you get the right nominees and win them in those open seats in Georgia and Arizona. I think it's 9. It might be 8. But and so you think about it, 8 or 9 MAGA senators in the Senate. Plus you have Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley already there. So you at 8 on 11 or 12. So who cares if Rubio's still there? Who cares if all the other people are still there? If you have 11 or 12 MAGA senators, you can hold up any legislation and form it to your own America First agenda. You don't need to primary all 20 of them. And I think that's Trump's long game for the endorsements. As terms of the House, I don't know what he's doing. He's probably just going to primary the 10. But in terms of the Senate, I think that's what he's going to do. And that's what I would advise, because you don't risk losing half of your endorsement races. And The open seats is where I would target.
Well, I'd probably have to disagree a little bit in terms of the Senate. I think that when you have a place like Arkansas, where you have a fairly weak senator, a place like well, he may actually endorse the primary challenger in South Dakota. He floated that idea.
Yeah, I forgot to say Alaska and South Dakota too. My bad. I expect those to be primaried.
But I feel like in just going out of his way early on in South Carolina, Kansas, Idaho especially, that's a big one, and Arkansas. Arkansas, you have fairly weak senator, doesn't really represent, I'd say he's like an old guard type of conservative, and you have a more America First Trumpian candidate in Jan Morgan that's running against him and probably will actually win the primary despite Trump endorsing Boozman, because she actually almost knocked off Hutchinson in 2018 without Trump's endorsement. So it's very possible that that happens. But Oklahoma, we'll wait on Oklahoma. But you have a lot of people that have been fairly critical of Trump, that haven't really stood with him, that don't really represent his vision of draining the swamp and not taking money from big mega donors when it comes to donations and things like that, as well as being a little bit weak on the issue of immigration. Overall, I would have to say that I feel like I don't know what Trump has to lose by not primarying some of these people. Maybe Rubio is too powerful in Florida. Okay, maybe that's true. But a lot of these other people, I really feel like Trump, just by endorsing another candidate and maybe rallying with them once or twice, is probably going to be good enough to carry them in a primary, and it could energize the anti-establishment energy and probably get higher turnout in the 2022 midterms. So I probably would have to disagree that he should just, pick a few battles or focus on open seats. But when it comes down to an open seat, he goes out of his way and tries to get Ron Johnson to run again. Ron Johnson, again, he's not the worst senator, as I've said, but I don't think that, doing that when you could have somebody like Nicholson, who is actually more, I guess you would say, more pro-Trump, more like a Trump originalist, will do very well in Wisconsin, will win the state for sure. I believe that he'd be a much better pick, but instead he goes out of his way and tries to get Ron Johnson, who's just a part of the Waukesha establishment, is fairly uninspiring, might not even win re-election. I don't know what he really has to gain by trying to primary out or by trying to not primary out Ron Johnson, or at least to just make the guy retire. And I still think he might, but I don't think Trump should encourage Ron Johnson to run for re-election. I don't think and I don't think that I'm necessarily coming from a bad place by calling out Trump for doing that or saying that I disagree with Trump's endorsements.
I guess you do what you will, but on Ron Johnson was the only guy who did anything meaningful on fighting the 3 a.m. stuff prior to January 6th. He held that committee hearing against a lot of criticism. He is also the only senator who did anything.
He didn't object.
That is true, but I still give him credit for the committee. However, and he's also the only senator who did anything to look into the Hunter Biden stuff. So, I mean, he's a fighter. I mean, yes, it's probably true that there's probably a better one out there. There's probably always a better one out there. And you know what? Ron Johnson's probably going to retire anyway. But I just can't get mad at the Ron Johnson endorsement, because he was loyal to Trump, and he was voting with Trump all the time, and he was fighting more than most in the Senate. So, I mean, I can't get mad about the Ron Johnson endorsement. There are worse endorsements to get mad about. That's my point.
Yeah, I mean, you say that he's, been a supporter of Trump. He actually he endorsed Trump in 2017 for 2020, not 2016, and then uncommitted his endorsement before re-endorsing him later on in 2020. I'm not exactly sure that that's the most loyal guy, even by Trump standards, because Trump really values loyalty over policy, it seems.
That's fair. I just think that he in the Senate fought more than most. There were a lot of other senators that Trump endorsed that were a lot bigger wusses.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I just feel like it might be a little. I'm just saying it might be a little hypocritical to say that Ron Johnson, wasn't really that pro-Trump because he did not really support him until the primary. But I know you've attacked DeSantis for doing the same thing. But I don't really want to go back to that.
No, I'm not interested in litigating that.
Okay. Other than that, I don't know what else you wanted to. I don't know what else you really wanted to talk about. It doesn't really seem like we have any super chats that people have sent in terms of questions. So I don't know if you want to give like closing statements or whatever when it comes down to the debate, or what else you wanted to discuss here.
Well, I just talk about 2024 real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
In terms of 2024, you see Holly, DeSantis, Cruz. Those guys are probably DeSantis out of all of them is in a non-Trump field. DeSantis is hands down right now the best candidate. I'm not saying that he isn't a good candidate. He's hands down the best non-Trump candidate out there. There's no question. And I'd vote for him. I just have my issues with him. However, there is like when people say DeSantis is polished and clear and articulate, that's actually going to be a little bit of a problem because Trump isn't. And now to the educated, political analyst who hears Trump kind of inarticulate, unclear, and he is at times, that's okay to the Eastern Ohio, Western Pennsylvania guy because Trump talks like they're the foreman at their construction place. They understand him and they connect with him with the way he acts and talks way better than they connect to a guy like DeSantis. And that's not a knock on DeSantis. That's a knock against all politicians who've been taught how to do public speaking the way they have been. And so that's just the fact. So a guy like Trump, who is just more off the cuff, more, just says what they're thinking, is probably going to do better with the white working class or working class in general than a traditional politician. And I don't say politician like corrupt guy. I just mean politician as in standard.
I mean, it's possible that he may not get the same margin in, rural Ohio. I still think he would win Ohio and Iowa by close to 10 points.
I don't think he'd win 10. I think he'd win less than 8 points. He's not going to do as well as Trump in Ohio and
because you said that he, I believe you said before in a tweet, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Harris would be very competitive against DeSantis in Iowa and Ohio. I think you've said
not
that
in
before.
Ohio, in Iowa, but not in Ohio.
Ohio,
DeSantis would likely win by 5.5 points, which is pretty good, but not as good as Trump. In Iowa, he'd probably only win by 3 or 4 points. Listen. People are underestimating the cult of personality of Donald Trump. Okay, a lot of those people came out for the first time because they were voting for the Trump the man. They don't really care about the policies. Okay, it's Donald Trump. Okay, you could drive around where I live, you still see Trump flags. Where I work, there are a lot of Trump voters and fans. They don't even know who DeSantis is. Okay, I'm just saying, DeSantis isn't going to get the crazy numbers that Trump is getting in Ohio and Iowa. It just.
Well, I think the midterms will tell us a lot when it comes down to that as well.
Actually, I don't think it will because it'll be a red-friendly year.
Well, still, if Republicans are going to turn out in high numbers, because it depends. 2014 was a red-friendly year. 2010 didn't really affect 2012 that much. But if Trump is going to be out there campaigning with DeSantis, I firmly believe he could win Ohio by 10. And I think the Trump factor does matter. But like I said, John James outperformed Trump in Michigan. He was a little bit more establishmentarian. Ron Johnson outperformed Trump in Wisconsin in 2016. He was a little bit more establishmentarian than Trump. Obviously, I'm not going to say that John James is like a full-on neocon or a full-on establishment guy, but he had, I feel like an anti-establishment candidate with optics that are friendly to somebody like the suburbs could do a little bit better. I agree with you that the suburbs are not going to come back to 2004 levels, but the margins I think could be improved over 2020 in many places if you run a candidate that's has this, I guess you would say, is a little bit more competent in terms of the view of a lot of these people, because a lot of people in the suburbs don't vote based off of policy. They vote based off of things like personality, and a lot of them didn't like Trump for some reason or another. So I think that DeSantis would probably do better maybe in Oakland County. He may regress in turnout in like rural Michigan, but I really think it's a wash when it comes to places like the Rust Belt. That's my personal opinion on it. I just really can't see this argument that DeSantis would completely and totally flop in Iowa. Obviously, I think that he may underperform Trump by a point or two. Ernst underperformed Trump in Iowa by a point or two, but they put a lot of money in her race as well for the Democrats. So I don't know if it's a fair comparison.
In terms of James overperforming Trump in Michigan, that only has to do with the Trump coalition voting for the Republicans. It's the same reason why Cornyn overperformed Trump in Texas. If Trump's not on the ticket, Cornyn only wins by 3 points. Because there's Richard Barris has said this. There are two different coalitions. The Trump coalition is voting for Trump and the Republicans, while the establishment coalition is voting for Biden. Okay. So that's why Tillis won. Without Trump on the ticket in North Carolina, Tillis doesn't even win. And in terms of DeSantis, if Trump's out there campaigning, and DeSantis will win by 10, kind of like how he campaigned in Georgia. He went 2 rallies and they got killed in Georgia.
That's because of McConnell, though.
Yeah, but Trump still, listen, you said if Trump campaigned for DeSantis, DeSantis would win. Trump campaigned in Georgia. Pence campaigned in Georgia. Listen, they still lost because Trump isn't on the ticket. It's just like in 2018. Trump campaigned in 2018. They still lost the House by 41 seats. Okay, he wasn't on the ticket. It doesn't matter if he campaigns. Okay.
Well, yeah, but it definitely. I think it helped.
It does
you
help.
Have to look at the circumstances of Georgia, though. It was a very different circumstance. You had people angry at Mitch McConnell, and a lot of Trump supporters really didn't care who Trump endorsed and decided to stay home. And some of them probably even voted for the Dems out of spite. You had a whole boycott movement that was going on because people were just so angry and so upset at the establishment.
That doesn't explain 2018, though. He probably saved
year.
It wasn't a wave year, though. He saved the Senate, but at the same time, just he wasn't on the ticket, and those Trump voters didn't come out.
But because he campaigned in places like Missouri and Indiana, that's why Hawley won by 6. That's why Braun won by 6. Without Trump, even being president, if it was a generic Republican, Republicans probably would have gotten whacked. Even if if Rubio was president, for example, Rubio could have had a 55% approval rating, and they still were not guaranteed to flip the seat in North Dakota at that point. That's how.
Even when that happened, there were still a lot of Trump voters who didn't come out. And there was a lot of Trump voters who voted Democrat. Even when he campaigned, even though he saved Missouri and Indiana and got DeSantis across the line and all of these things, he still couldn't get all of his voters out without being on top of the ticket.
It's a midterm year. It favors the Dems, just like 2022 is probably going to favor us by a couple of points.
My point is that you can't just rely on Trump campaigning for DeSantis, and that's what he's going to save the day. If you want Trump to save the day, you might as well just nominate him, because it's not going to be the same as him being on the ticket.
Well, that's why I prefer Trump in Michigan when it comes down to the whole, who do I want in 2024? But either way, I would feel content knowing the fact that in a full turnout election, that DeSantis will probably do just fine, and Trump supporting him and endorsing him will probably help him get across the finish line in a place like maybe even Pennsylvania, if he campaigns with him in like Western Pennsylvania, maybe Eastern Pennsylvania, in the suburbs in Philadelphia. He may outperform Trump by a couple of points just by not being Trump, for example.
Okay, so what if Trump didn't campaign with DeSantis at all?
Then it might not energize voters as much, but who knows what the circumstances will be 4 years from now. We're in 2021. I don't really know what's going to happen in 2024. It's possible that the nominee, we've never even heard of him before. It's not the most likely course of action, but it's very possible. But either way, I think it would be competitive. I agree that Trump got a lot of people across the finish line. I disagree with the fact that he, for some reason, helped Cornyn win by the margin that he did. I think that there's a lot of anti-Trump vote as well that will just blindly vote for the Democrats on the ticket no matter what. So I think that probably, I don't even know if Trump really helped Cornyn at all in that election, but maybe in like South Texas.
Look at Southwest Texas. Trump did a lot better with Hispanics than Cornyn did.
I agree. But in places like suburban Dallas and suburban Houston, where there's a lot more population, it may not exactly have the same effect. Obviously, like I said, South Texas is similar. The Hispanic trend is similar to the white working class trend as we've seen, at least in the 2020 cycle in Texas. But other than that, not exactly so sure that statewide that John Cornyn would have, only won by 3 points. That's the margin that Ted Cruz won by over Beto, and they pumped a lot of money into that race. So
Trump also came in to save his butt.
Well, that too. I definitely think that Trump holding that one rally in Houston probably did help Cruz significantly when it comes to margins, because it was a big, big event. But other than that, I'm not exactly so sure that Cornyn would have only won by 3 if it wasn't for Donald Trump being there. Because, I mean, you look at the Dallas suburbs. I don't know the exact margins, but I believe that if you look at them in Dallas, Trump lost Tarrant County. I believe, I don't know the margin offhand, but I believe Cornyn won Tarrant County by close to 5. It was roughly 5 points.
And
Denton
Trump lost
County.
it.
Well, yes. And
see, there's the disparity. Trump is doing well one place and Cornyn is the other, and it's a reverse. There's 2 different coalitions, and that's why Cornyn wouldn't do as well if Trump isn't there. Because there are more working class Hispanics than there are suburban Karens.
Well, I don't know if that's fundamentally true if you look at the population in the counties, though. Like South Texas doesn't have as much as Fort Worth.
Yeah, but without Trump on the ticket, Cornyn doesn't even do as well in those Hispanic counties.
I probably would agree with that. I probably would agree, but there's probably a lot of people that voted Democrat down ballot in places like Denton, Collin, and Tarrant just because of the fact that they hated Trump because they were the suburban Karens, even if they may have considered voting for Cornyn if Trump wasn't on the ticket. So in Texas, I think it'd probably be a two-way street, electorally speaking. I agree with you about South Texas, but the coalitions thing in, Dallas and to a lesser extent, Houston, which actually seems to be turning the corner. It's a little bit of a different story, a little different story there, but that's just my take on the whole electability thing for Trump and DeSantis. Cause I just feel like, as you said, it's a two-way street, but it really depends on turnout. It really depends on is the base energized. We'd have to look at a lot of trends we see. I think 2022 could tell us a little bit about 2024. Not a whole lot, because 2018 didn't tell us that much about 2020. Besides, we had a pandemic in between. So I think it depends on a lot of factors.
What I'm looking for in 2022 is what the Trump voter does. Do they come out? Exactly. Do they come out? Do they vote Democrat? Because some of them are traditional Democrat voters. So it will be very interesting if they come out, or if they come out and vote Democrat, or they don't vote at all. It may not even be a very good year for Republicans.
I agree, and that is something that we will have to wait and see. We'll have to look at. I don't want to say we'll have to look at polling, but I would probably look into the enthusiasm tabs, because that can really tell us a lot. Obviously, 2020. The laws were changed in several states, and the enthusiasm part of it wasn't exactly the most accurate, but it is something that, like I say, we will have to look into, and it could tell us a lot about it. But we'll really have to see at the end of the day, education trends in the midterms. That is something worth looking into, but we got a long way to go between now and 2022.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
And I guess if I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to touch on, you could give a closing statement here if you want, or unless you have anything else you wanted to bring up, because I guess now's the time.
I got nothing. I just say Trump 2024 all the way.
Yep, I definitely would agree with that. So thank you, David, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. I loved it.
All right, thank you. Bye. All right. All right, let's see. There we go. I think it's good. So I think that the debate has been ended. So there we go. So all right, guys. I'll probably end the stream soon, unless you guys have super chats for me, because I will be getting to those that we have. But I do appreciate everyone for tuning in. I guess press 1 if you think I won, press 2 if you think I lost. I know it's going to be a biased chat anyways, but I'm sure we're going to get a lot of ones in chat. But I guess I just have to say that in terms of the turnout Trump DeSantis thing, that I think the most productive part of the debate was actually the last part, because all that it's going to come down to is turnout. And if Trump supporters will turn out for somebody who isn't Trump, if it's Ron DeSantis, because I think DeSantis is the guy. I don't think that Trumpism without Trump works unless you have that guy. But I think personally, DeSantis could be somebody that really would fill that void better than anybody else, especially if you look at his like massive overperformance in Florida compared to the rest of the country in, 2018. And they threw a lot of dirt on him at the time, which is another thing I really wish I brought up, because they were calling him racist. They were doing all the same thing to him they did to Trump, and didn't really work, backfired. So, all right, a lot of ones. There are a couple twos. And I saw 1 or 2 threes. We'll have to see. We talked about E-Verify for like 25 minutes. That wasn't exactly what I wanted to do at the beginning of the debate, but that's okay. Let's go to the super chats that we have. Christian Romero says Nikki Haley should be the 2024 nominee. I assume that's a troll. Bro Caro says the suburbs aren't coming back. Chapman is right. Well, yeah, they're not going to go back to 2004 levels. I've said that multiple times. But will they come back maybe a few points if you run a candidate that has great optics potentially? Bro Carosa's Dems failed in 2010, not because it was a midterm, but because Obama wasn't on the ticket. That is true. And we'll have to see what happens, because Biden won't be on the ticket. But I don't think anybody really voted for Biden. They voted against Trump. And now that Trump's not on the ticket, maybe Trump's turnout will dip, but maybe the left turnout will dip even more. I don't know. We'll be live tomorrow discussing with another individual about the future of Trump's movement, or just the America First, conservative movement as well. So we'll have to see what happens then. But Forrest says, I can't say that live. Bro Caro says, let's see what he said the last super chat. Can't even read it. It's not popping up for me. Okay, there we go. Cult of personality wins elections, not policy. Look at Trump, Obama, and Bush, all won because they could relate to their voter base. I think both matter. If Trump wasn't talking about certain issues, he definitely would not have gotten the edge. The video maker 2341 says, I respect you, Rep, but I thought you were kind of soft. Well, I didn't know exactly what you guys expected me to do. I talked about the issues at hand here, but we'll see. Eric Barron says, Chapman said in a deleted tweet DeSantis would win West Virginia by less than 20. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Mitt Romney won the state by like 30. If Mitt Romney could win it by 30, DeSantis is probably going to win it by, I'd say probably, I think he'd win it by a Trump margin close to that. Turnout, like I said, turnout might dip without Trump, but we'll see. I just don't know. Trump probably may run and he may win. We'll have to see. A lot of people are saying that Trump is done because of the events that transpired post-election. And I'm over here laughing at that because nobody really genuinely cares about that. And going up against Kamala Harris, you think people are going to enthusiastically, I guess you would say, stomach her? Because you could stomach Biden. You can't really stomach Kamala Harris. It's like the Hillary Clinton thing all over again. If she actually becomes president and keeps doing what Biden's doing, she's going to lose any libertarian support that she had at one point. That ultimately will probably defect over to somebody like a Gary Johnson type and definitely hurt the ticket in the suburbs by proxy. So we'll see. I don't know. Yes, in terms of LTE debating him, he's not going to do it. I've asked him several times, so it's not going to happen, but that's really it for that. Yes, that is the other thing that happened today. Nikki Haley said she would not run against Trump in a primary. That is true. She said she would not. I don't know what to take from that, but other than the fact that she's not being stupid, because she would get decked in a primary, and she can play that and say, hey, look, I supported Trump for 2024 if he ran, if he doesn't run. And she's going to use that as a piece against somebody like DeSantis that will say that she's a fake Trump supporter or whatever. Jesse Christensen says Trump should have Herschel Walker as VP. True friend who's a brave man. Let's get him into the Senate first. Let's get him to the Senate, and then we could talk. But yeah. No, Nikki Haley is smart. Like her or not, she is smart. She knows exactly what she's doing, but smart doesn't necessarily mean that you're good. You can be evil and smart. In fact, a lot of evil people in politics know exactly what they're doing. So Kilu Foreman says, should Trump change his residency to another state? Yeah, I should change it to Nevada. If he changes his residency to Nevada, he'll do better in Nevada, maybe, and DeSantis on the ticket could definitely help a lot. So yes. He won't. I don't want him to choose Pence again. If he's going to choose Pence again, that's going to be I'd say that's going to be a big no for me. Debate. Yeah, David had a conversation with UEP before. So, I mean, it was actually a really good conversation. I actually like listening to it. The guy's a smart guy, UEP. He's like, I think he's only like 15, but he does know what he's talking about by and large, I would have to say. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have debates. We'll have debates and discussions. Not every discussion is a debate. I probably would say that the debate that we had tonight was probably not that intense. I didn't really expect it to be super intense. Maybe I hyped it up a little bit too much, but I don't know. We'll see. David Carlson versus David. Oh, yeah, I'd like to see that. David is a very entertaining debater. David Carlson, that is. And he really probably would have gone more in. I'm more laid back. It's kind of more laid back stream when it comes to debating. I try to focus a little bit more on substance. David Carlson would probably throw some ad hominem attacks out there, and it would probably get ugly. But either way, if you've seen David debate True Americans before, it was pretty funny. That was a great debate. Not just the first, like the big one, but the one where it was like 25 minutes, like before the election in like mid-October. That was pretty good. Thermodynamics and statistical mechanics says things that I can't say, repeat per the guidelines of this epic and great platform that we are on. That's a little ironic, but that's true. I can't say that. But the Senate in Michigan was very, very close, a little too close. I'll leave it at that. But we can't allow that. Oh, I forgot I'm on StreamYard. I can actually put up the things on the screen. I forgot that. So let's see. Link Chapman's channel. I don't know what it is. I'd assume it's just David Chapman. He's more active on Twitter than he is on YouTube, I think. So Gabe versus Chapman. Yeah. Gabe would have been interesting. I don't know. Videomaker 2341 says David Carlson would have destroyed Chapman in 5 minutes. Yeah. I don't know. Probably. Okay, there you go. DC perspective. There he is. Put this message on your stream. Well, looks like I did. Congratulations, David. Red Eagle is the best conservative commentator. Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. I really do appreciate that. But let's see. I don't think any Republican would win for the next. Never say never. They say that after Bush, after Obama won in 2012, even before Trump won in I guess you would say 2016, the days before the election, Bush would be the last Republican president. Yeah, how well did that work out for you? We saw Donald Trump for 4 years. What do I use for streaming? For streaming, this is the first time I'm using StreamYard, but I think I'm probably not going to use it next time. So Chester County it's not going to happen. I hate to break it to you, but it's very unlikely. Chester County is a very gone county. If the Republicans break 40% in 2024 there, that will already be seen as a massive win. Red Eagle is the best progressive. Yeah, the best progressive commentator. Yeah. Again, that part of the debate really just, I was laughing a little bit because you have to talk in modern terms. I guess maybe Chapman, being a historian, doesn't really like to, but I disagree. I think that progressivism is, in the modern context that everybody uses it in, is seen as, AOC. Even when you say classical progressivism, that's like 90s Democrats at that point. So I have a super chat here. Let's see if I could put the super chat. Okay. Jesse Christensen says, do you think they should make the filibuster an amendment? I don't know if it'll get passed, but I don't know. I feel like if we're in power, then we should, then I feel like I'd be more comfortable getting rid of it. But Dovey Przansky says, due to the Orthodox Jewish community, I believe New Jersey and New York go red. It's not enough. They have a very high birth rate, though, and the rest of America should take note, because it's really good for population growth. It's the Mormons and the Orthodox Jews have high birth rates. So I think it definitely not red very soon, but maybe in a long, long time from now. We'll have to see. But who knows? The parties are changing. If the Republicans are going to be a little bit more anti-Israel than they are now, which they're very pro-Israel right now, then maybe that won't happen. But we'll have to see. Let's see. Okay, let's see. I don't know if we have any more super chats. I think we have one coming in right now. Rule Americana says right-wing, socially, economically moderate GOP. Well, it has to be economically moderate. Can mean many things. Joe Biden can be considered a moderate when it comes to economics. Some people may say that in chat that he's, left or far left. Depends how you really define it. Moderate economically, it could mean a lot of things. Keep that in mind. Let's see. Red Eagle versus Cotto. Yeah, I don't know if I debate. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that'd be entertaining. I've been on his show 3 times, but Four says Trump 2021. Mike, yeah, no, it's not going to happen. If that happens, I will. If Trump does manage to get back in office before an actual election, I will delete my channel. I will say that right now. That's how confident I am. So, yes, economic populism does not equate to economic moderation. That's my point exactly. Jay Helbert says, if you could debate anyone, who would you debate? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not exactly sure. It was a fun debate tonight, personally speaking. We'll have to see. It could have been a lot more intense than it really was. I didn't really want to make it that intense, but we'll see. We'll see who else wants it. If there's some big election mafia people, but they don't want to debate me. Where's Lion Niles? Where did Lion Niles go? Where is he? Oh wait, he's nowhere to be found. He probably deleted his account or something like that. And we're not debating the Castley guy. He's irrelevant. I'd rather debate Lalo than debate Castley. 200,000 subscriber special, 2-hour anti-Lalo dissertation. Let's have that happen. That would be a fun video. But no, I'm just kidding. It's not going to happen. I would be down to debate Lalo, though. That would, if you want to see an intense debate that I wouldn't be afraid to throw a few ad hominems out there. Yeah, well, probably would be a Lalo debate, would be a debate that you'd want to watch. So, the thing is, he's just so nuanced. It's so annoying. That's the problem. It's not that I disagree with him on everything, but he's just so annoying with his ridiculous amount of nuance that he adds into everything. So, yeah, Cenk doesn't have time to debate. Debate Cenk. No, it's not going to happen. If I was to debate Cenk, then I'd have to bring back the Cenk voice in the debate just to mock Cenk, and that's not going to happen. TV N64 says, do you think Keemstar? No, it's not going to happen. Doesn't matter the fact that the guy's got 2 million subscribers. Nobody over the age of 23 knows who he is, and he's not a political guy whatsoever. Shout out to Gwaine Martin for the super chat. I appreciate it. But I don't know. Who knows who the next debate's going to be, but it might be for a while. I haven't debated anybody on this channel since I debated like True Americans back in like July or August, and it wasn't even a debate. It was just more of a discussion. But let's see. Real American. Well, we've already had discussions before. I was more accurate about the election than Real American was, so I probably have the mandate on that one. So let's see. That's not Fake American. That's real. Fake American has a black background. You see like where the white is surrounding like Michigan and Wisconsin. Fake American has a black background. It's like not, it's transparent, so it doesn't show up. So yeah, exactly. Nobody even knows what Keemstar's real name is. How's he going to run for office? He'd have to like go by his real name first. So yes, we've talked about this before, the LTE, but I don't know. We'll probably end the stream. I don't want to go for too much longer. We'll probably end it in about 3 or 4 minutes. May Marino 1041 says debate Donald Trump. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I do have criticisms of Donald Trump, though. I just don't think he'd want to debate one of his own supporters. I think that he probably would get embarrassed, honestly, by some of it, and he'll probably get angry and defensive because I'll call out his endorsements or whatever. That's fine. We love Donald Trump. We love Donald Trump. Am I scared of? No, I'm not scared of the guy. I don't really know who he is. I'm not going to give him the time of day. He's irrelevant. He's completely irrelevant. And he called me stupid, apparently, from what I heard. So I don't know if that's true or not, but everyone keeps asking me and David the same question about this guy who nobody's ever heard of. Like I said, if you want me to debate somebody with his ideology, I will easily debate Lalo. So Joshua Perez says Joe Collins, Kim Klacik 2024. I hope you're trolling, by the way. People that steal money from boomers. Yeah, I don't think that's the best combo. Now, the left has their own Joe Collins and Kim Klacik, and they're running in Florida and Kentucky for this Senate. You have down in Florida, or for Florida governorship, you have their agricultural secretary who can't win against DeSantis, will take millions of dollars to lose by 7 instead of by 10. And then you have the guy who's running on ending the filibuster in Kentucky and is getting millions of dollars from left-wing boomers. So the grift in politics as a whole is pretty strong. And whether people know it or not, they're just taking money and they're losing by a massive margin. And it's not okay. It's not. Rich Waswill says we should get rid of the filibuster. We can never pass a moratorium or federal level election integrity act. We're going to need a supermajority to get a moratorium to begin with. But I would agree. But the truth is, once you lower immigration, it's not popular to raise it up. That is what I will say. So the good news is that even if a Democrat runs, on opening up the borders again to what it was originally, they're going to lose big because it's not a very popular position. Gwen Martin says, what about a debate with David Pakman? I don't know. Maybe sometime in the future. Let's see. I think we have one more. Bro Caros says, debate Nuance Bro. I like Nuance Bro, actually. I do. I don't know if I would debate Nuance Bro. We probably agree on probably a majority of things, I would say. But I like Nuance Bro. He's probably a little bit more, neoliberal when it comes to economics. That's not like neoliberal as a whole, like Biden, but like, I guess I'd say a little bit more libertarian. Debate Hunter. I've actually tried and he has never responded, but Hunter Avallone is somebody who won't debate. He won't debate anybody that actually brings any substance to the table. How many debates has he backed out of with John Doyle now? Like 5 or 6? Not exactly good. He'll only debate you if he's only going to debate you if you debate him with somebody who's a no-no person who he can use to try and get you deplatformed if he sees you as a threat. That's really all it is. So Hunter Avallone he's irrelevant now. He gets less views than I do, despite the fact that he has 6 times the amount of subscribers. So why exactly do I care anymore? I've tried. I've reached out to him. He wouldn't do it. So Cleo Foreman says, I think you should debate edgy 16-year-olds from your Discord server. I don't really have any Discord servers anymore, but that's always fun. I mean, we did that once, but it's not going to happen again. So Nick Roaming Mean Gene XG says Mark Stein. I don't know. Is that somebody you want me to debate, or I just don't know who they are? Jason S says, do you have any hope for the West Coast or the Northeast? Oregon was what's a point, and now I'll look at it. Yeah, third parties really, I thought, drove that. Like I said, it would get closer with Tucker if Tucker was the guy, because he'd probably have more crossover appeal to certain places. But let's see. Me Marino 1040 wants to debate Adam. I don't know who Adam Ragusa is, so let's see. He won't debate AJ. Yeah, well, actually, he had to get into a group call with him to like vaguely claim he debated him. It's kind of sad, but yeah, Hunter Avallone. What a downfall. What a downfall. Mr. Beat. I'd actually pass this one on to David because David is the expert of debunking Mr. Beat. I've seen Mr. Beat talk some stuff about me in his comment section, which it's kind of ironic that he was throwing shade when he was people were mentioning me in his video he did with, I think it was LTE, and he was criticizing me despite the fact that my final prediction was more accurate than LTE's by the margins, not by states, but by the margins in each state. We were accurate in most states. Same thing with 538, which essentially was the same as LTE's final prediction. 538 or 527, as I like to call them. Awful. They're awful at sports. They're awful at politics. And we're going to be discussing, we're definitely going to be discussing 538 a lot in next year, because they're going to come out with their terrible, awful Senate models where they'll have Wisconsin going blue by 4 points and eventually it'll go red by 5, guaranteed. So what can I say? Joshua Perez, how will Joe Collins, Kim Klacik win by? They will win Michigan and Georgia, because no, they wouldn't. Just because somebody is a certain pigmentation doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to to win a certain state. And if you're a Republican and you're a minority, you're not going to really energize minority turnout, because that's mainly a Democrat thing. So I don't think so. Can I moderate a debate between Rap and Nico? Yeah. That'd be a lot of weight to carry in that one. That's two big guys. Yeah, that would be awful. Why debate Avaush? I don't even know. I feel like when it comes down to that, it's how productive really is it? How productive? My audience will say Rep won. His audience will say that Vaush destroyed me or something, which he's an okay debater from what I've seen, but has some very, very strange views. So I don't know if I would. It's not really at the top of my priority list, but maybe sometime in the future. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not rushing it. Gabriel Bungay says, out of curiosity, can Supreme Court remove a president? I've been conversing with a prophetic voice who, not going to happen. Not going to happen. They're not going to remove him. And even if Trump proves something, they're not going to put him in office. But if they do find out something that was never found out before about what happened, then it will delegitimize the Biden administration. Absolutely, it will delegitimize them. Absolutely, Trump will be a favorite for 2024, and he will be vindicated on a lot of what he had to say. But until then, I don't know. Probably nothing is going to come out of anything, judging from the way that our system works, but we'll have to see. The video maker 2341 says, what factor makes you planning to move to Arizona? I don't know if I'll move yet. It said probably. I'm not exactly sure, but there's multiple reasons. You talk about political power and the changing dynamic. There needs to be more right-wing people in Arizona, but there's also other factors, some of which I probably won't discuss, that are the reason why I want to move down to Arizona. Definitely, economic opportunity is one of them. Potential future career goals is another. So I don't really want to get too much into that. But Nick Roaming Mean Gene XG says debate CZ. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. What exactly would I debate on? I don't know. Probably, I don't know anything that at the top of my head that would be interested. I'd be interested in debating him on. So I don't know. Not really top priority. But other than that, I don't really know what else people have to say. I guess it'd be a last call for super chats, and then we could end the stream because we've gone over a little bit. Yeah, we should honestly, base populist. I agree. I should debate with David. We should do 2v2s. That'd be fun. Cause we'd be very dynamic in terms of just being two, people that have a little bit of a different style when it comes to debating, but are lockstep in ideology versus Chapman. Well, the thing is, didn't Chapman say Cotto? I don't know what he said, but they've blocked each other over it. So I don't know. Probably not going to happen. Although I would like for that to happen. I just don't think that Cotto and Chapman don't get along from what I understand. Let's see. I don't think we have anything else. So debate Madison Cawthorn. I don't know what he stands for. I don't know what he stands for. Let's see. Did I say that the slightly offensive episode with the conservatives debating gay marriage, Doyle and the other lady destroyed the two liberals? I probably would say that it was a hard debate to watch. I thought that Doyle did a great job. I think that Lauren got into it a little bit too much, and I think that probably some people may have been turned off with some of her attack lines, but overall, Doyle won that debate big time. And the second debate he was with Bryson Gray, that wasn't even a contest. They both did very well and destroyed the Pikachu guy and I don't know, it was a man or a woman or whatever, but a very strange individual with a very strange past, I will have to say, both of the people they were debating. But tomorrow's stream might get, David, you'll be there. It's not a debate, but it'll be a fun stream. It'll be a fun stream. Let's see. Debate Dan Crunch. No, he doesn't like to debate. These people on the right, they don't like to debate people from their right on certain issues, or technically left, depending on what you're really talking about. But I would say that no, they wouldn't. They're not down for it. I give Chapman a lot of credit for coming to the debate tonight, whether you like him or not, whether you agree with him or not. I thought that it was a productive conversation. So, debate ball. Yeah. Got a lot of dirt on that guy. That's for sure. A lot of screenshots, but I'm not going to talk about that. So we'll see. Debate Catalina Lauf. She won't do that. I guarantee you. A lot of these establishment people that are astroturfed run away from any form of discussion. And that is not something that is good in my opinion. So I'm going to have to say no. Let's see. You agree on Chapman? Well, yeah, that's probably true. I mean, I think that I disagree with him on certain aspects of electoral politics, but overall, I would have to say we agree on most things. I would say, but it's the things that we disagree with that really spark the divide, especially with the DeSantis thing. Charlie Kirk is another one of these characters that won't have a discussion with anybody on his own side because they fear more anti-establishment conservatives. Although Kirk is getting a lot better with rhetoric, but judging from who his mega donors are, yeah, I don't know if I'd buy it. So we'll see. But he was defending Tucker and what Tucker said. And like I said, what did Tucker say? He went out there and he said, he told all these people that he's going to stand his ground and the watchdog organizations can just take a hike. And as a result, he didn't really get that much blowback from it because they couldn't do anything. And that's what we need to do, is just stand our ground. And it goes a long way. People like Tucker Carlson know this by and large. The historians' debate, yeah, that's not going to happen. I disagree with him on pretty much everything, though. I will have to say that. We would have a lot to debate about, from pretty much every single issue. So, yeah, that guy is fed for sure. Spencer is a fed. But other than that, I don't know. And like I said, feds won't have a discussion with people. The people that are a part of the, which by the way, Spencer's a part of the establishment. There's a reason why they put him on CNN all the time. Debate Razor Fist. I like Razor Fist. He probably is he's more libertarian than me for sure, but overall, I don't know what we disagree with that's like that big of a deal. Let's see, what kind of phone? iPhone 7. Need to upgrade for sure. Lalo says, let's wrap this up. I agree. We're going to wrap it up. Thanks everybody for showing up to the debate, donating. I appreciate it. Follow all the social media links in description. We'll be live tomorrow. New video on Thursday. Watch my last video if you haven't watched it yet for sure. Also, guys, thanks for watching the stream. Red Eagle out.